Hello, you good people.
Hi, I'm trying to touch you, but I can't.
We will touch you. We will absolutely touch you. Thank you for joining us. This is 5 Minutes with Robert and Amy Nasir.
Hey.
You knew that. Today is Sunday, August 14th. You might have already known that. 2022, the 226th day of this, your best year yet. Maybe you didn't know that. If not, we're bringing it on. You've got 139 days left to make this your best year yet. Christmas in 133 days, Halloween in 78 days. Somebody I know was going to do her Halloween shopping early, but
Time's ticking.
she ain't got to it yet.
Yeah, I got a couple things in my Amazon, but...
Oh, okay. So you have started. Okay. But I know the local stores were going to hit them too. And finally, 39 days until autumn. Yeah, we've done an autumn countdown because we want to make sure we don't miss summer. And oh my gosh, we did not miss summer last night. So cool. Wait, was that last night? The night before, we saw a band. We'll talk about that in a minute. But first, this day in history. Exciting things happened on August 14th when FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, expressed concern for young people who've come to wonder what would be their lot when they came to old age. And he signed the Social Security Act. Although it was initially created to combat unemployment following the Great Depression. Social Security now functions primarily as a powerful safety net for retirees and the disabled and provides death benefits to taxpayer dependents. Well, if you know what those are, well, I won't get into the criticisms, at least not yet. The Social Security system has remained popular and relatively unchanged since 1935. All right, tell us in the chat. Do you think Social Security is popular? Is it popular with...
I want a waiver. I don't want any more taxes taken out for that. So, and then I can just say I'm not going to get it. I mean, that's what I actually asked one of my representatives.
Yes.
When I was 19 years old, he came into the place that I was working, and I asked him just that. I said, I just don't want you to take any more taxes for this, and then I won't get Social Security. How about it? And
I bet I can guess what his answer was.
Everybody needs insurance.
Yes.
That's what he says.
Yeah, the usual answer is, well, you say that now, but when you're out in the street, you'll be glad it was available.
You'd be saying, thank you, government.
Yeah, exactly.
No.
More interesting to me, the very first recipient of Social Security, Ida Mae Fuller, who lived from 1874 to 1975, lived to be 100 years old. Well, Social Security is a win if you live to be 100 years old, isn't it? But wait for this. If it would have been a win anyway. Win. Let's put that in scare quotes there. Between 1937 and her retirement in 1939... Wait a minute, isn't that just 2 to 3 years? Yes, because of course they started the Social Security deductions and she only had 3 years left of her career. Between 1937 and her retirement in 1939, she paid a total of $24.75 in Social Security payroll taxes. Why am I laughing? Though Ida Mae Fuller had paid into Social Security for only 3 years, she received monthly checks until her death. Remember, she stopped paying in 1939. She received monthly checks until her death on January 27th, 1975. At 100 years old, she received a total of $22,888.92. Now, $22,888 was a lot of money back then, especially considering she only paid into the system $24. So there you go. Ida Mae Fuller gamed the system right there.
Actually, the state lottery.
Well, it's funny because there are interviews with her, and she talks about how at the time she didn't even know what it was all about, but they took the money out, and when she happened to go into town one day, it just came up that, you should apply for that Social Security thing you've been paying. She said, well, I've been paying for it. I guess I'll apply for it. And it turned out that, yes, it paid off, 1,000 times what she paid into it. Now, here's a question for you. Do you think you'll get 1,000 times back what you paid into it?
No.
I figured out, based on my life expectancy, I might get back exactly what I put into it. Now, you imagine if you took that couple $100,000 and if I had invested it, even in something like really safe, not even an index fund, but like a friggin' bank account.
Right. A bank account.
What would that have looked like over the course of 50 working years? Well,
A lot more. And on top of that, that would be more capital for people, for businesses to open up.
That's true. It would have been beneficent for the entire economy.
Yeah. And yet it's just flushed down the toilet.
Yes, like shite. We can say that and still be G-rated, right?
Like a poop.
I'm pretty, yeah, yes. What did they do? What they do. So, it's also the birth date of Doc Holliday. Remembered for his friendship with Wyatt Earp and his involvement in the gunfight at the OK Corral, regarded as the most famous gunfight in the American Old West. So, happy birthday to Doc Holliday. Deceased, of course. Actually, he died young. You would think he must have died in a gunfight, right? No, actually, he died of tuberculosis, because back then, people died of stuff. It was the craziest thing. All praise to modern medicine. We're going to talk about that, because we're going to talk about capitalism. But yes, happy birth date to Doc Holliday. Incidentally, something I didn't know before looking up notes for this episode. What Doc? What do you mean a doc? Was he a doctor?
Oh, who was this Doc?
Some of you will know because you've seen the old Westerns. I haven't seen enough Westerns. No, he was a dentist.
What?
He was a dentist and gunfighter. Because why not?
You know, I mean, if you inherited a wrench, you were a dentist.
Yeah.
That's exactly, and I'm serious,
right.
serious. If you had the tools, then you were a dentist.
Yes. Stephen in the chat says, some of my clients rely on Social Security. Believe me, we're all going to rely on Social Security. There's a few holdouts who say, I don't care that I paid into it. I don't believe in it, so I'm not taking it. I'm not one of those people. I'm not old enough to collect Social Security yet, but if I live that long, I want my money back. Now, I know the money's already gone. It's already spent. It's immoral to take the money of people who are putting in today. Except for the fact that, assuming I continue to work past that age that I'm collecting, I'm still going to be putting money into it. I mean, how do you fix that? It'd be one thing if it was just a cutoff. Or, as Amy said, if we could just take a waiver and say, you know, I'm 50 years old, whatever your age is, I'm not going to pay any more Social Security, and I won't ask for anything when I turn 62, 67, 70, whatever your magic number is. Now, I know what my representative would say, because they've said this before when I've talked to them about it. Well, you don't know. You don't know when you're 70 years old what your situation's going to be. And if you turn out to be indigent, if you turn out to be helpless, you're going to be a burden on the state anyway. Believe me, this is the most efficient thing to do. To which I say, I've done the economic calculations, incidentally, to reach this conclusion. The answer to that is so. And phooey on you. Finally, it's a happy birthday to Steve Martin.
All right.
The comedian, writer.
Charmed the world with tuna fish sandwiches.
Tuna fish sandwiches. I like to have my own special scent. Yes, I love the early Steve Martin. Even though it was very absurdist, and so occasionally it would cross the line into nihilist.
I love his banjo playing, though. He's really talented. And L.A. Story was quite funny.
L.A. Story is my favorite Steve Martin movie. And I think it's really the antidote to La La Land, which is a controversial film about L.A. as well.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
They were both had elements of absurdity in them. La La Land, because of course it was a musical, and people would stop on the freeway and get out of their cars and sing songs. And L.A. Story had a bit of absurdity thrown in more than once, but I found it much more charming. The only sad thing about that movie was finding out that afterward, Steve Martin and Victoria Tennant did not stay married.
Oh.
Kind of a sad story there.
Yeah. But it's a great movie.
I wonder if he had married Sarah Jessica Parker, if they would have stayed married.
Yeah, after La La Land, I wanted to not just break into song, but, break some chairs, break some screens.
Break into the director's house.
Break some heads.
Cause some trouble. So,
but
yes. Share with us in the chat.
What's personal reaction?
What's your favorite Steve Martin movie? Because he's Steve Martin. I mean, you've got The Jerk. You've got the updated versions of, now I forget the name of it. Not The Parent Trap. What was the other one? Anyway,
Father of the Bride?
No. Yeah, Father of the Bride, right. Yes. And Father of the Bride, too. It was successful. Yes. He's been Inspector Clouseau in the remakes of the Pink Panther movies. What's your favorite Steve Martin movie? Put it in the chat. I want to know, especially if it's L.A. Story. I'm kidding, of course, except I'm not. So, happy birthday to Steve Martin, 77 years old. still act. I love it when people get older than their expiration date. You know, at my age, I look at the actuarial tables, and Steve Martin, 77 years old, still producing, still creating. We haven't quite finished Only Murders in This Building yet, but we will. That will happen. Yes, very good. The Jerk was a great early Steve Martin film. And I think better than Roxanne. I remember I enjoyed Roxanne when I was young, but now as a big Cyrano fan, I find it a little too
When I think of The Jerk,
blasphemous.
all I could I just start laughing, you know, because it's so funny.
So many moments. Finally, today's August 14th. It is National Financial Awareness Day. And my little blurb here says, do you lavishly spend money like they did in The Great Gatsby? Are you saving for retirement but uncertain where every penny is going? Do you live from paycheck to paycheck? Whatever your financial situation may be, it's time to look at the big picture and commit to becoming more aware of your spending. I have financial advice for you on Financial Awareness Day. My top tip for financial success is this. Don't spend your money until you've earned it.
All right.
And that's the opposite of Yaron Brooks' advice, incidentally. And he's smarter than I am, so he's probably right. I just say this as somebody who has been in debt before.
Well, I see Euron. So if anybody doesn't know what Euron says, in general, if we're saying this right, is that he thinks that you should spend more than you make, and you should for instance, get a big house and a big mortgage, and then you need to find a job or a way to promote yourself or get into some sort of side hustle or business or whatever to actually earn more money. It's an incentive to earn more money.
Well, that's part of it. And part of it, too, is the house will appreciate in value, whereas money sitting in a bank won't.
Right.
And if it appreciates in value more than the interest you're paying on your mortgage or loans, it's a win. So Yaron says, anytime I can use somebody else's money, I will use it. And he's right. He's very wise when it comes to finance. I've just been so in debt that I've become allergic to debt. And yet, that goes against what was I saying last week? No risk, no reward. So you do you, but especially if you're carrying revolving credit, high interest debt, pay that stuff off. It changes your whole life once you finally do. Now, what are we listening to this week? And I say that because one of the things I was listening to this week was Yaron Brooks' discussion of the Salman Rushdie stabbing. Very tragic, very sad. I haven't read any Salman Rushdie. He's not my kind of writer, but I'm enormously respectful of his position on free speech and the way that he has handled that issue and the challenges that he's had ever since the Iranian fatwa on him decades ago. Some bastard finally has taken action on that. So definitely listen to the Yaron Brooks show on the Salman Rushdie. I mean, he's been good all week, but between that and he discussed the Trump raid on that show too. Link to that one is in the show notes. The other thing that we were listening to this week, night before last, we listened to the Accidentals. Yay! Now, what are accidentals? Accidentals are those sharps and flats that get tacked onto a given key signature in music. But no, the accidentals in this case are musicians from up north, from Interlochen, Michigan. These two gals, we've mentioned them once or twice before. They're amazing. Mm-hmm. When they were young, they were in music high school. Man, why didn't we have a music high school in Southeast Michigan? Unfortunately, my parents didn't send me up to Interlochen to go to music school.
My mom didn't send me. And I was first chair.
You were first chair.
I was first chair alto saxophone. Thank you very much.
I was just a shaggy-haired guitar wannabe. But either way, we should have been at Interlochen. These two gals were, Sav and Katie, and they've added on a drummer, Michael, and they're amazing. They started out on violin and cello, but now they put on a rock show. And a lot of it's folk rock, a lot of it's just straight rock. It's a real mix, a lot of fun. Check out the link in the show notes. We saw them live. Too cool. Too cool. Amy, incidentally, if you're friends with Amy on Facebook, but it's friends only, she's posted photographs and video clips both from that show and the bike ride the next morning. We went on a biking adventure at Rouge Park. Rouge Park. What's Rouge Park? Rouge Park is a park in the city. of Detroit.
Detroit, everybody. Oh, be afraid. Be so afraid.
So we had, a dozen crimes against us while we were there. No, just kidding.
Yeah, we barely got out alive, know.
Where the weak are killed and eaten.
And now we're addicted to drugs.
Drugs, yeah. I don't even know what kind of drugs they were. Just some dude came up to us and said, "Here's drugs, man. This is Detroit."
Just shot our arms with heroin.
Shot us up.
Shot us up.
That's what it was.
Yeah,
that's what happened.
That's what happened.
I remember.
In Detroit, where the weak are killed and eaten.
That's right.
No. I gotta tell you, Rouge Park is fan-freaking-tastic. It is a larger park than Central Park, as a matter of fact.
It is larger than Central Park.
It has a beautiful pool, a beautiful splash pad, beautiful grounds. It's got archery, of course, a beautiful basketball court that was donated to them by the Pistons. It's got a butterfly freaking nature trail. There's so much more. Gosh, there's a mountain biking trail. There's all sorts of walking trails.
Yes. If you're in Michigan, this is a place to go. But what was fun about it was, in Detroit, we've got a great art museum.
Yes.
The Detroit Institute of Arts.
The best art museum in the world.
Well, it's right up there. And what's fun about that is that they take, given 10 pieces of their works in the museum, create reproductions that are weatherproof, and they put them out in public places. And one of them, they have 10 of them at the Rouge Park. So we did an art tour, Detroit Institute of Arts in conjunction with Root. 2 cool photographs on Amy's wall. Take a look at that, as well as the pictures from the accidentals. What else are we listening to this week? Incidentally, Jim Ashley, I just got the Facebook feed coming up. I already had YouTube up, and Facebook was... Anyway, Jim Ashley on the Facebook feed says, my favorite Steve Martin movie, or parody, Dead Men Don't Wear Plaid. I have not seen that since it came out.
Yeah, we gotta. I wrote in the comments on YouTube. I just need to take notes afterwards and write down all the things that we need to watch that you guys are suggesting. So
yes, although the humor sounds racy here, he says, and I like this line at the end. Oh, I haven't had my willy adjusted in years, especially without having to beg. I don't remember that line, which means I don't remember the movie, so I will have to give that another watch.
And we'll have to watch the. Steve Martin is Mike McMack, defense lawyer on SNL. Anything. I remember vaguely. Him and John Belushi and then the gang and Gilda Radner, they were hilarious. SNL should just stopped in the 80s and just said, we're not funny anymore, and just stopped. Because they were good. If
you watch the clips, they're funny. They're just not as funny.
Oh, yeah.
They're still funny. They're just kind of a shadow of their great period.
It's like 1 out of 20 skits is funny. But anyway, that's my take.
It's pretty hard to compete with a young John Belushi.
Yeah, and
Dan Aykroyd,
Eddie
and Chevy
Murphy,
Chase,
Eddie
and
Murphy.
Eddie Murphy. The original, Bill Murray when he was still young and hungry, and not quite as cynical. Although recent interviews of Bill Murray are worth watching. He's getting older and wiser. He's played so many older and wiser people that he's finally starting to sound older and wiser.
Oh, and Jim also asks about this T-shirt that I'm wearing. It's so when I went to the X concert, X is a band from Los Angeles, and they are the freaking best. And
this was just a week or two ago.
It says X with a spooky cat, 1977. That's when they formed.
That was not actually when Amy saw them. It was 2022, but 77-22.
But I got to be
45?
in the same room with. I don't know if I said anything about this on the show, but X is a great band. They're all alive. They're all original members, and I just gotta tell you, I just cried like. I think I said this before, but
very cool.
CX, look them up.
The last 2 items under what are we listening to this week, real quick, because it's us. I always listen to our stuff. It's the only way you get better. You got to be able to critique. Besides, I kind of like the stuff we do. But we did do a show called, we never had to take any of it seriously, did we? Now, the Atlas Shrugged fans will know that is a line from the book. Actually appears twice in the book. And we talked about that concept of what merits taking seriously, what deserves your attention, and much more. So that was on our Life on Earth show on Thursday. And then on Friday, we are continuing the Keeping It Real series with James Valiant.
Yeah.
I thought that show went well. Although
That's great.
You were quiet this week.
Well, because I was really, really
Well, you had
not
just
in
come
the
out of a
mood.
meeting, and you were not in the mood for doing a show.
That's
you
rare.
might
It's
wonder,
so rare.
how is it that these guys are always ready to do a show, except when they're not, but just about always ready to do a show.
But I said 6 really wonderful words on that show, which is, let's see,
What did you say?
Robert, you need to write a book. Okay, that's 7 words. I said, Robert, you need to write a book.
One more reminder that book,
And then and
values are primary.
yeah, I said, Robert, you need to write a book.
Yes. Maybe that's the value of, why does Facebook say my live video is ended?
Uh-oh.
Are we still out there, folks?
Yeah, we are. We are.
It says
I
we're
see
live
it.
on Facebook. All right.
Okay.
Must have just been my one
Sorry for the technical
monitoring
difficulty.
system there. Hopefully nobody got thrown out of the video on Facebook. If you did, you can't hear me, but if somehow you're still hearing me, refresh that
You
page.
contact us telepathically.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, we're sending the vibes out. So that's what we've been listening to this week. Under links you need in the show notes. This is great. I've talked about Gene Moroney's Thinking Directions before. And even if you're not part of the Thinking Lab, which, is great, magnificent, thinking skills, especially motivation skills, honing your motivations to keep you maximum productive. But she also sends out a free weekly newsletter with a lot of the same information, and this week's was the basic solution for blankness. This is a winner. If you're not already on Gene Moroney's mailing list, go to thinkingdirections.com and sign up. Link is in the show notes also to this article, The Basic Solution for Blankness. A couple of quick excerpts. She says, in Tap Your Own Brilliance, Tap Your Own Brilliance is one of the programs she does, I teach in-depth tactics for dealing with the 3 most common thinking obstacles. Okay, here's the 3 most common thinking obstacles. Now, what was interesting about this was I thought of this in the context of art and in the context of writing. But yes, thinking obstacles. Amy, you think about this. Does this apply to you in art?
Mm-hmm.
The 3 most common obstacles are overload, blankness, and floundering. And in regard to those 3, she sums up the basic solution for each one before she gets into specifically blankness. She says, the basic solution for overload is to get ideas out of your head onto paper.
Yeah.
Now,
Break it down in small bits.
Well, that and get it out of your head.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Even if you don't break it down, get it out on paper. Get it out of your head. So it's sitting on paper, and now mentally you can let go of that big list that's in your head and start to focus. Number 2, the basic solution for floundering is to clarify your goal. If you're floundering, if you're flip-flopping, it means you're not clear on exactly what your goal is. And then she says, the basic solution for blankness, and I think of this as a blank slate, a blank canvas. If you're an artist and you've ever stared at a blank canvas, or if you're a writer and you've ever stared at a blank page and thought, I've got this big idea of what I want to do, but no idea what to start with. She says, the basic solution for blankness is to warm up your mental databanks, i.e. the relevant context of knowledge. Blankness is a form of mental paralysis. You've asked yourself a question and you've gotten absolutely nothing in response. Now you should read her essay, but I'm just going to skip to, part of the solution here is the strongest connections are logical connections and causal connections to your values, because these get special attention and repetition even without deliberately attempting to memorize them. That is why we ask logical and causal questions to pull up information we want to access. This is great. The top 6 are Kipling's Honest Serving Man. Or Honest Serving Man. The Honest Serving Man, this is from Kipling's writing. Kipling writes, I keep 6 honest serving men. They taught me all I knew. Their names are what and why and when and how and where and who. I keep 6 honest serving men. They taught me all I knew. Their names are what and why and when and how and where and who. If you can answer those questions, some number of those questions about what it is you're trying to do, what you're trying to accomplish, what it is you're working on, all of a sudden you will find concrete specifics. You will find a start to what you're doing. Jean says, here are some of the questions I might have asked myself in a context in which she's addressing this. What are the next events? This was in regard to a club she was working on. Why do I want to write the letter? When did I last do something with the club? How is the club doing? Where do they get the information? Who has been helping out? So in other words, you use these questions to bring up specifics in your mind. And you should read the essay itself. It is outstanding. But yes, the basic solution for blankness. I know this feeling all too well of dealing with a blank page, a blank canvas, a blank starting point. Link is in the show notes, but you'll find it at thinkingdirections.com. Also, under links you need, well, I'm going to jump right into lived experience, because that is the next thing. I said part of my mission is to find the kernel of truth in well-loved woo.
And butter it and eat it.
And butter it and eat it, like kernels of popcorn. Well, this week I'm finding not the kernel of truth in well-loved woo, but the reason people believe in something that I don't love at all, which is the concept of lived experience. And I know a lot of us who are dealing with philosophy or the present state of the culture are running into this. So first I had to look for a definition, because I think we all know what we mean by it, but I went to the United States government and the HHS, Health and Human Services. What is lived experience? Lived experience refers to, quote, representation and understanding of an individual's human experiences, choices, and options, and how those factors influence one's perception of knowledge, unquote, based on one's own life. Well, that kind of sounds like it would apply to everybody. We all have experiences, and it forms a basis for our value judgments in the context of our knowledge. But then they go on. In the context of our research, people with lived experience are individuals directly impacted by a social issue or combination of issues, who share similar experiences or backgrounds, and can bring the insights of their experience to inform and enhance systems, research, policies, practices, and programs that aim to address the issues. It sounds reasonable, but people with lived experience are individuals directly impacted by a social issue.
So in other words, it's
yes.
It's a something that only they can understand that nobody else can, and it's usually, if it's a social issue, if that's what they're framing it as, it has something to do with some kind of social agenda, and the idea, like what was that called in critical race theory? There's a particular content called something epistemology. It was it's basically
viewpoint epistemology.
Viewpoint epistemology.
Exactly.
And so only, it's subjective. No one else can understand it. So and they have the person who has a lived experience has emotions about this particular experience,
right,
that you can and you cannot question about their experience,
right.
Otherwise you hate old people, right?
Yes, and you hate women, and you hate people of color, and you hate Mexican Americans, and you just you can't understand. Now, where have we heard this before? I know we have a lot of people who know more about philosophy out there than I do, but you have heard the expression polylogism, the idea that different cultures have different logic. And you encountered that if you listened to the Yaron Brook show, in which he had Alexander Dugin on, spiritual advisor to Vladimir Putin, who explained that Russian truth is different than other truths.
Ugh.
this polylogism, the idea that there are different logics, and add to that multi-perspectivism, which was not just the artistic school that Pablo Picasso started, but this idea that we see things, not just see things differently, we see different realities. This is this idea of lived experience, which again sounds like, well, I'm going to bring in evidence from my experiences, but no, this is subjectivism masquerading as objective.
Yeah.
This is what, when you hear people talking about objectivity and you know that, well, they're not talking about objectivity the way I'm talking about objectivity. This is what they mean by objectivity. And that's because any claim to certainty, which we would think of as objectivity, absolute certainty is out the window. It's interesting when I go on Twitter, which I do now. I never used to do Twitter, but I'm on Twitter now, twitter.com/Robert Nasir. And if I mention the concept of certainty, the next question I get, oh, what church do you go to? What religion are you?
Oh, intrinsicism and subjectivism is the same meaningless, worthless coin.
Well, only the Sith think in terms of absolutes.
Right.
Only religious people talk in terms of certainty.
And what really, really cheeses me off, gets my goat.
What gets your goat?
Is when...
Not your greatest of all time, but your literal goat.
You'll hear, people who are kind of sort of woke or whatever, and they talk about their lived experience and all of this stuff, and they try to be respectful of each other, and you hear this. But there's such a glaring contradiction there when they talk about empathy. Well, you can't empathize with somebody who can't tell you conceptually what they've been through, who will refuse to even talk about it, or even bristle at the idea of if somebody questioning what they went through, if it was similar to another person's. If you can't work through a conversation with through reason, through communication, through words, through concepts, there is no empathy.
Oh, you're right. But it gets even worse than that. If you are an empath, somebody who is naturally empathetic to people, like we are being introverts,
I know what you're all thinking and feeling right now.
That's right. Yeah, you're thinking, what the hell is wrong with these people? And
No.
I'm so glad that Robert and Amy are dashing their ideas to pieces. No, if you are a natural empath and you hear the lived experiences of people who face challenges you don't necessarily face, now it's getting to the point where you're not allowed to express that.
Right.
Because you're being presumptuous. You don't understand. Stay in your own lane. You don't get what we've been through.
Oh, stay in your own lane.
Is that just the you just want to slap anybody who uses that expression in earnest.
What do you say after that? Well, you should be barefoot and pregnant. You should stay home. I mean, what is that? I mean, that's... Ugh.
It's the same mentality that believes in cultural appropriation. You should respect our culture, but don't do any of the things that have to do with this culture. That would be wrong. No, wait, what? Now, without getting too much into that, we've all seen the rude, Halloween costume version of somebody exaggerating a culture, but that's not even what's being talked about here.
Yeah.
This really is subjectivism masquerading as objectivity.
Yeah.
Do not fall for it.
Yeah, okay. All right, good. Very good. Excellent. Now that we know what's wrong...
Well, but the point is we keep running into it. Now,
yes, that's true.
The rationality community, the Steven Pinkers, the Sam Harrises, the less wrong community, Julia Galef, Eliezer Yudkowsky, the better thinkers out there right now, for all their philosophic issues, they keep running headfirst into reality, and that's my hope. I think there is hope that eventually they're going to have to re-embrace certainty and let go of being so concerned about context that they let go of reality. I think there's still hope. The kernel of truth that makes lived experience seem reasonable and substantial is that experience is data. When I was young, we would read books by minority authors, not in order to change our paradigm, but just to get more information about what real people have gone through.
Right. And oftentimes those stories are inspirational.
Yes.
And they cross cultures, they cross contexts, and it's really lovely.
Yes. So the kernel of truth is that lived experience is data. It's not conclusive evidence. It's certainly not philosophy, but it's still data. Facts matter. And life experience provides facts. And further, we all have a sense of life, a sense of what life is, unique to our own psychology and our philosophy and our context. A hierarchy of values that is unique to ourselves, a part of our identity. Mm-hmm. And this leads us to the knowledge of certain truths. And sometimes it leads us to think our values are more universal than they are.
Like my dislike for La La Land. I know it's not universal. I know this.
Well, it's one thing we've had to learn because,
and that's fine.
Because we hold certain truths to be self-evident. And it turns out that they're true, but they're not self-evident, and they're true within a context.
Yeah.
So, for example, there's Amy's version of the 1980s.
Yay!
Which is not the journalistic view of the 1980s.
No.
Which included a lot of stuff that just wasn't that great and wasn't that important. But Amy's version of when we say the 80s was the last great decade, it was the last great decade of revolution, and it was the last great decade of optimism.
Yes.
There were people excited about fixing the things that were wrong with the world and who were optimistic that they were going to have an impact.
Right. Yeah. And so, I made a whole, a one-page, a whole list of things. I asked myself, Amy, what are your favorite memories from the 80s when I was a teenager? And I'm sure I have more. Holy heck. And, yeah, I'm writing one in again here. So okay. And I don't know if we want to go on this tangent or go down this journey, but, and what else you have to say tonight. But I have a lot to share if anybody wants to go down memory lane with me.
Well, tell us in the chat. Should we turn Amy loose with
turn me loose
with the 80s?
Well, see, okay, I mean...
Now, Frank is asking the Breakfast Club. I don't know. What do you think of that aspect of the 80s? The John Hughes teen dramas.
I thought it was okay, but not great. When I was a teenager, okay. Now I may look at it and say, oh, that's nice, but it was...
Still okay, but not great.
Right.
Mixed.
It was mixed. I really did not like what they did to... poor Ali Sheedy's character at the very end.
That was the worst. It was kind of like what they did to the late Olivia Newton-John in Grease.
Oh, I know.
She was such a sweetheart, and she's like, no, you've got to be a little skankier, then you get the guy. Oh, okay. In the Breakfast Club, let's take the rebel and make her more like a nice girl.
And I understand people have their own, because I've seen opposites about Grease, about... There's a gentleman named an illustrious man named Robert Garmon who corrected some people about Grease, and he didn't think that she was skanky or slutty or anything like that. No,
she wasn't. She just took on
She was just more daring.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And I get
coming out of her shell kind of thing. Not just books, but also adventures sort of thing. I guess. Yeah, I guess you could say that. But yeah, no, the Ali Sheedy thing at the end of the Breakfast Club, I don't think it was that. But, yeah. And so, yeah, the 80s, they were terrifying in high school, in public high school. If you were different, if you were a punk rocker, if you were into alternative music, you had very few people to turn to. At least I did. And oftentimes those people would, leave school early. They would drop out. And It is very sad. I stuck to the end. But yeah, it was very, very interesting. There is a band that I'm going to be seeing actually tomorrow night called Peter Hook and the Light.
Peter Hook and the Light. Where is Peter Hook from?
Peter Hook was from New Order and Joy Division, and he was the bassist. And if you know that band, if you know their music, you will know that the bassist was crucial to their sound. And so I'm really excited to see them tomorrow. They're going to be playing all New Order and Joy Division songs. And I got to tell you, when I first, I rarely had money when I was a teenager. I was poor. But when I did, I actually had money, I would go out and buy myself a new record album from Harmony House or Sam's Jams or whatever. And I bought the double album, the Substance album from New Order, and I brought it home. No one was home. It was just, I was living with my mom, my brother, and they were not home. And I put the record on, and I played a song called Ceremony. And on the record player, with a needle and the album, the vinyl. and I danced to that. I jumped up and down and pogoed like constantly. I mean, I just couldn't get enough. I couldn't get enough of that song, and I still can't. So I'm pretty sure they'll be playing that tomorrow night. It's very, very happy for me. So happy. So anyway, there are some things about the 80s, and we've talked about this before, about the kind of the more intellectual writing of the lyrics of alternative music and punk rock music that I absolutely loved, that really, really made me question things, including religion, but also philosophical ideas. And and I got into Nietzsche somehow. I forget exactly how, but and then I eventually got into Ayn Rand when I was 16. And it was great. So I was really attracted to it, and I thought to myself, someday I am going to find my people. I'm going to find, because anytime I would dress up, I would spike my hair up, I would do all sorts of wild makeup on my face. I would wear all black, and I would go about, and I would just, half the time I was embarrassed because my mom was there. God, it was so embarrassing. But one time we went to the Ann Arbor Art Fair, as a matter of fact, and I was looking really cool. I spiked my hair up really, really awesome. I was wearing a beret, and even though it was 90 degrees out, I was super hot. But and I was wearing all black. But I was so hoping to see people, because Ann Arbor to me was sort of like a utopia. And I really wanted to see people who were dressed up like me. And if you did see them, I would go right up to them and say, "Hey, I like what you're wearing," and they would say the same to me. And then you would start comparing bands with each other, so it was so fantastic. And I made some friends that way. But since I didn't have a car and we were poor, I couldn't meet other people outside of my little area. But I have more experiences, if anybody. I don't know, what are people saying in the chat?
Mostly they're talking about their own impressions of the 80s.
Oh, okay.
Frank says the 80s was the last decade to have great music. In the 90s, I was more interested in the Yankees than in music. It's funny, because if I go back to lists of top 40 top songs in the 90s, there was some good music, but it was mixed in with so much grunge and so much pessimism.
Right. It was pessimistic. It was
so it was a mix.
It was like the worst parts of the 70s.
But you still had some great stuff too.
Yeah.
Janet Jackson was going strong in the 90s.
Sure.
And a lot of great artists were. It was just
good things.
It just skewed in the direction of pessimism.
Yes,
and grunge and the dank and
I know. But I just
But the music videos of the 80s.
Yeah, I watched MTV for sure.
Just epic.
They were so good. And the production values went way up, with Duran Duran came out, and every time a new video came out from them, it was like, oh, they're totally,
oh my gosh, yes.
They're totally blowing out of the water.
And just epic stuff. Everything Michael Jackson did. But even think of the Take On Me video by a-ha.
So creative.
Just epic stuff. Amazing things. And it's funny because it was just 2020, a couple of years ago, and you were seeing the memes that said, "Thank you, MTV. Happy 40th anniversary for the 14 years of great music videos."
Exactly.
Because, after a decade, maybe a decade and a half, they just, MTV, which, stood for music television,
Yeah.
stopped being about the music. It's kind of sad.
Right.
But the 80s were amazing.
You know what was amazing in the 80s? Thrift stores.
Thrift stores. Really?
Heck yeah. You can do all sorts of clothes from there. I mean, there was stuff from the 1960s. So you had all these like go-go dancer outfits and things like that. And you had also a whole bunch of things, of course, that you wouldn't be caught dead in the 80s, which included wing collars, those gigantic wing collars, and the bell bottoms, and all the polyester and stuff. And then you go there to the thrift stores, and you'd laugh, and you'd say, ha ha, who uses an 8-track tape anymore? Just like the young people now say about, all sorts of things.
Although it's so funny that vinyl is back.
Yeah, it is.
And vinyl's back in a big way. We
It
showed
is.
pictures from our trip to Ann Arbor during the art fair. And this music store, it's all vinyl.
I mean, really huge store.
Yeah, and even in the department store, the Target has a vinyl section.
I know.
It's the most amazing
It's
thing.
really crazy. And I just want to give out a shout to, there was a place called Penny Pinchers. And
Penny Pinchers.
Yes. It's the old, the Mod X, the Modern Exchange. That's what it turned into anyway.
Oh, okay.
But in the 80s, it was called Penny Pinchers. Sounds innocuous enough. You go in there, you look like you're in the Satanic Temple or something. I mean, it's all black, all crazy New York, like thrift store findings. Basically, the owners, and they would play the most bizarre music. It was all like, really crazy alternative music. And you walk in there, and then the owners behind the counter, they wouldn't greet you. They would just be totally morose and really cool, in their New York way. And you'd go up and I'd try to find something to buy. Unfortunately, what they did was they went to New York, they brought it all back, sold it at 300 times marked up or whatever. And but it was just stuff that you couldn't find anywhere. And it was beautiful stuff. And they had a great eye for things, but it's the kind of store that the B-52s would be shopping in, kind of thing, if you know that reference. And I absolutely loved being there, but I was too afraid to talk to anybody because they all intimidated me.
Oh, you were shy. We were both shy. We're such shy people.
Because they were older. If they were younger, I'd talk to them. But yeah. Oh my gosh. I mean, and like I say, I loved making jewelry out of hardware wire, stripped garbage tie wire, and repurposing rhinestones from the costume jewelry that I'd buy at the thrift stores. And it was a great time. It's a great time, and honestly, it was. There wasn't a lot of luxuries back then. I really didn't have much money until I actually had a job when I was 18, but it was. There were some really good memories from the 80s. Stuff that just is unrepeatable.
Yep. But Amy's version of the 80s is unique. It's unique to your values.
Yes.
We lived through it. We had our lived experience.
I can tell you all about it, and I'm sure you all can relate.
Yeah, Jim summed it up in the chat. He said, "You haven't gone what I've gone through and struggled with, so whatever you say is logically true, isn't." Is that kind of what they're saying? Yeah, that's kind of what they're saying. But what we mean by that, and again, I don't know if you call it the kernel of truth, but the thing that makes people believe this kind of stuff, the element that is true is, yes, we've all got our own context for that, for what was not true, but significant, what mattered about it. And it's why I encourage people to take ownership of contentious issues. We talked about forgiveness, for example. I still run into this in the coaching communities, run into it on Twitter all the time. What passes for wisdom when it comes to forgiveness? Forgive everything. Forgive everyone so that you're not carrying the burdens around with you. And that's not right. It's just not right. Some people should not be forgiven. That's getting forgiveness wrong. We've talked about it before. Link is in the show notes, but the short version is you don't have to forgive in order to forget. just because you've decided this person is a ne'er-do-well, they did something bad that can't be forgiven, doesn't mean you have to carry that burden around. You can just forget without forgiving. That's what people are missing in that. Getting judgment right. People say, well, you shouldn't judge other people. Well, you absolutely should. You should just do it better. You should do it objectively. A link to my analysis of that on Twitter is in the show notes. Getting capitalism right. That came up on the John Galt line today, on one of these old graphics that Louise, one of the administrators for the group, brought up. And it's the old pyramid of ability, except it's not. It's the pyramid of crushing those below. And at the top level, you've got the people manipulating the system, and you've got the politicians who carry them, and then you've got the oligarchs, and then you've got the corrupt business, and at the bottom, you've got us. You've got the laborers, the people who carry everybody else on our backs. It's the worst kind of propaganda. And it had a caption that's something like, this is what capitalism asks from you. That you carry that burden of everybody else. Which
is hilarious because that's, any socialist state that's ever been tried, that's what happens.
Yeah. Yeah, Louise posted that and said, okay, what does capitalism ask from you? And she knew the kind of answer she would get. I said, capitalism doesn't ask me for anything, but it offers me everything.
Yes.
And all I've got to do, just some guy, all I've got to do is capitalize on the countless, endless opportunities in a capitalist system. Because at root, that's what capitalism is. It's the get the hell out of my way and let me live my life-ism.
Yeah. Now, when I was a socialist teenager, punk rocker, before Ayn Rand, it occurred to me that I didn't know what the hell I wanted to do with my life. So the idea of capitalism and actually trying to figure out a purpose in which that I can actually have a paycheck from scared the bejeebies out of me. and I thought, well, I could be a musician, but I didn't have anybody to form a band with in my town. So it was a little scary, but and I kind of bought into some of the bands who were anti-capitalist, but eventually I read by the time I was 18 and I read the Atlas Shrugged, it was done.
Yep. It's interesting, too, because, again, to me, capitalism is simply political economic freedom. And yet, George Reisman has written 1,000 pages on it, and Andrew Bernstein has written Capitalism Unbound and Capitalist Solutions.
The Capitalist Manifesto.
Yeah, we've got the manifesto around here somewhere, too.
Somewhere around
Although
here.
I haven't finished reading that one, so... But yes, there are whole volumes you could write about the history of capitalism, but what these volumes are really about is what happens when markets are free. And it gets complicated throughout history, but it's about history. What capitalism is leave people the hell alone. Let them figure out what to do. Let them figure out what is best for them. To say capitalism leads to social ills, in other words, to say freedom leads to social ills, is to say that human nature is corrupt.
Yeah, so why bother,
Leaving people...
Let's just stay in bed, everybody.
No. What they're saying is what you do is you control people to make capitalism work for them. Because, again, you leave us alone, you leave us free to make our own decisions, the people will get taken advantage of. The cronies will take over. Yeah, to those who would make such a claim, my response is, speak for yourself, brother.
Yeah. And they often do, because the people who want to control you, I mean, what makes them better? What makes them more capable of? I mean, if you can't control your own life, what makes them capable of controlling your life?
Because we elected them, and therefore the wisdom of the masses will put the right people in charge of you and me.
Yes. It's some sort of Hegelian collective amoeba kind of thing that we're all, unconsciously connected to somehow. But only the elite are.
Well, that's pretty philosophical. But even think about it in terms of individuals. How insulting is that?
Yeah.
This idea that the people who've made their fortunes and whose businesses I've worked for are somehow on my back, keeping me down. This is both absurd and offensive.
Yes.
Every time I've taken advantage of a job opportunity, I've gotten everything I agreed to.
Mm-hmm.
And everything I wanted out of it. My employers took advantage of me no more than I took advantage of them. Whether they were already multi-zillionaires or just starting out, our relationship at every point was a relationship of equals. And I had the option to continue or to walk out anytime I liked.
Yeah. I developed that attitude by the time I was probably 19. And I thought, you know what? I'm hiring myself in effect. I could walk out anytime. I could leave this operation. I could just stop working with them. And they don't have anything, they wouldn't be able to do anything about it. So I'm employing myself in effect.
Yes. So I've got a long list in the show notes of things to get right. Things to apply your own lived experience to come up with answers that don't necessarily match the mainstream. And we talked about getting marriage right. We talked about getting masculinity right. How the nice guy syndrome is only a problem if you're a nice guy, but you also lack masculinity. In other words, self-assertiveness. The women go for the jerks because they're self-assertive, because they've got stones. Testicular fortitude. If you're a nice guy and you're self-directed and you're assertive, you're going to come out on top every time. Whole link of fun stuff in the show notes with regard to that. But the whole point that I wanted to make is, yes, your lived experience matters, not in the sense of the current culture war, but in the sense of you should absolutely have your own take on every significant thing out there.
Right.
You deserve to write your own book of life.
And you shouldn't sell yourself so short.
No.
When you say, oh, well, my feelings are way too complex to actually explain to anybody. No.
Yes.
No, you have that power. You have the words. You just have to find them. You have to work a little harder, and you can't just tell people, well, don't question me. It's insulting, and I'm sure that there are some people out there who say these things and they don't mean to insult or offend, but and they don't understand why people are offended, but you can't sell yourself short. You can't keep insulting everybody implicitly in that way.
Yes.
Have empathy.
Oh, let's see. For some reason my Facebook window just closed. But I was going to agree that, that's all right. We'll get back to that. But I do want to wrap up with this thought. No, I just lost it. Hold on, let me bring this page back up. Sorry about that.
Oh, do you want me to read something from the... Oh, you got it.
Yeah. Oh, well, not that. But yes, Jim was saying the most pessimistic rock song I've ever heard is Epitaph by King Crimson. From '69, which I guess would be the Court of the Crimson King album. Excuse me, that album gave me nightmares as a kid. And I regard King Crimson as definitely pessimistic, even though they write some great and brilliant things.
Yeah.
Especially because they had Bill Bruford in the group. But no, Robert Fripp is amazing. And at various times they had John Wetton in the band. They had Greg Lake singing on that first album. He was the singer in the Court of the Crimson King. Amazing band, amazing people, amazing music. I can't listen to it. It's just it just puts me in a foul place.
That's how I feel about all of Pink Floyd, but that's just my take. You like Pink Floyd all you like.
Well... I would point out exceptions to that in their catalog, but and hey, Yarrenbrook likes Pink Floyd, so they must be all right.
So Froda, hey Froda, hey so HCA Hegelian Collective Amoeba, this wins Facebook today. Thank you very much. I worked hard on that.
I don't know what that's a reference to.
It's what I just said when I was talking about people who want to control.
Ah, right.
Yeah.
Right. Right. Very good. So, I've said before, I'll say it again, but I'm going to make a special emphasis this time. You, and now I'm pointing at you. See, I got pointing at the camera here. The people listening on the podcast are like, I can't see you. You are the star, the director, the screenwriter of this film, Your Life. Well, my point today on Sunday, August 14th is you are the screenwriter. You're putting the script together. And yes, in every one of these areas, you should have your idea, not just of what's right, but of your particular understanding of what's right. I'm not going to read George Reisman's book. I think we've got the book, but I don't think I'm ever going to get through it. It's 1,000 pages on capitalism, things I don't need to know. I know enough about capitalism to know what I know. That's my understanding of capitalism. I've applied my lived experience to it. You are the scriptwriter. You are the screenwriter. You are writing the novel of your life, and you have every right to say, this is my version of the 80s. This is my version of the 90s. I know what part of that's objective. I know what part of it's strictly me. Re-listen to Greg Salmieri's lecture on principles and personal values if you have any confusion about the objectivity of your own personal values. I think what most people would call subjective, which I think is the wrong word for that. You are the star. You are the director. This week, think about the fact that you are also the script writer. That's what I'm going to be doing. Speaking of what I'm going to be doing, my homework for the week is I'm going to be playing music. I'll try to post a few things like I did the last time I did this. Remember, I posted a few covers on guitar and piano and singing songs. Because we've got Rock and Roll Picnic coming up, we've also got a retirement party coming up where we may play some music. That's my homework. If you're not a musician, find your own damn homework. No, seriously, figure out something that you would like to do and improve on. Because the neat thing about it is, if you do a little bit every day, you'll actually improve, whatever it is.
That's right.
But if you have a guitar, you should make it that. Especially you, Mr. Humphreys. But my Post-it note for the week relates to my homework for the week. My Post-it note for the week says, every day, something. Because every day I need to make progress on my set list, my list of songs to play at the party and the picnic coming up, and just to practice. Because one of the things I've learned is you don't get any better if you don't practice, which is a hard reality to accept when you're looking at a blank slate, a blank canvas, a guitar, and thinking, okay, what do I do today? But every day, something. It's a reminder that I actually need this week and next week, because we have 2 weeks until the picnic. Every day something. If you want to write that on a Post-it note and apply that to something you've been wanting to make progress to but find yourself stalled on, read that Gene Maroney article on how to beat blankness, but also remind yourself every day something. Now, way back when, I had a Post-it note similar to that about the time we were starting this show, and I think I was finding it even harder. Back then, I would have a run of days, or at least a day here and there, where it didn't seem like anything good got accomplished. So I put up a Post-it note, and I wrote this one down again today just to remind myself of where I was at a couple of years ago. I had a Post-it note that said, no 0 days. You'll know this one from the coaching community, self-improvement, self-help. This is not original with me, but no 0 days means no days that you look back on and say, that one was wasted. That was not a good day. Nothing got accomplished. Nothing got done. No. Instead, turn it around, make it positive every day. Something. That's my Post-it note for the week.
I just want to give a shout out to Linda Cordair, who is in the Facebook chat.
Awesome.
And
Cordair.com.
Cordair.com.
Christmas is coming.
Yes.
What did I say? Christmas is in 133 days. You should be buying yourself a Christmas present from Cordair.com.
A Christmas present that will keep on giving because it gives you spiritual fuel every day when you look at it.
That's right. So thank you for joining us. We ran long, but the last time we ran short. If you didn't hear Monday's episode, it wasn't much more than 30 minutes, or what is that, 6 times as long as 5 minutes should have been.
Right.
You should give that one a listen as well. We honored our late friend Andrew and talked about related issues. Thank you for joining us. We're glad you're here. We're glad you're here on this Sunday, August 14th. Real quick, show notes are already posted at YouTube. They will be posted at Facebook as well. Links to all the stuff we talked about, including a couple things we didn't get to but were related, so you didn't really miss anything. Go to those notes, click those links. Lots of fun. I put work into putting those together. You'd better click those links. If you have ideas for future episodes of this show, go to the 5 Minutes with Robert Nasir Facebook group. Now, you might say, wait a minute, why isn't it the 5 Minutes with Robert and Amy Nasir Facebook group? Isn't that what you're calling the show now? I just got to update the group and make sure it doesn't kill the links.
I've changed my name to Robert, so it's Robert and Robert Nasir.
Oh, well, I thought you were going to start calling me Amy. We could try that sometime, see what that does for our love life. Yes, if you have any suggestions for future episodes and not suggestions for improving our love life, post them in the 5 Minutes with Robert Nasir Facebook group. If you would like to support the show, if you want to throw money, and you absolutely should, more people should throw money, because those of you who do, don't you feel good every month knowing a couple dollars, or some of you it's more than a couple dollars, go toward this show every month? Yes, you do, and we love you for it.
Yes.
If you want to contribute, go to robertnasir.com. You'll find links. Patreon.com/RobertNasir. PayPal.com/Robert. Just go to robertnasir.com. It's all there, everything that you need to know. And finally, with that said, running along, so my voice is leaving me, and I will leave you with this thought. Again, this is your movie. You're the star. You're the director. You're the producer, which means you got to come up with the money. And you are the screenwriter. Write a good one. Live it. Do it. We wish you every success. We wish you all the joy and happiness you so richly deserve. And as always, we wish you love.